Hello guys, just want to make a quick little video here. This is how to move a pivot point on an object and get the object centered in the world. In this instance, I'm going to use the foam block object. I just want to show how, when you create a box, I'll create another box over here. You can see that when the pivot tool is created on that new object, it creates it on the 0 axis for Z, and it kind of puts it in the middle of the object. That may not always be the case, but that's usually how it works out. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to be working with this foam block object here. In this case, you can see that the pivot point is at 0, 0, 0, or centered in the bounding box. Typically, even if you tried to create it on 0, 0, 0 in the world, it's not going to create it exactly perfect there. So you typically draw it off to the side somewhere or slightly offset. For this example, obviously we want the pivot point to end up down here on this back edge, but still be centered. So obviously you can go over here to Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, and you can move it freehand. But that's not obviously the best way to do that. So the first thing that you want to do is center it to the object. Now that puts it at the 0 axis in the center of the bounding box. Not the world, the bounding box. So once you've got that centered right there, then what you can do is go back to the editing window here and just go ahead and set the X and the Y to 0. Now obviously if you set the Z to 0, it's going to be underground. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo that last step. We want the foam to sit on top of the ground plane, or 0. But like I said, we want to move the Z and the Y in this case. The X is going to be perfectly centered. So that takes care of one of the measurements for us. On the y-axis. It's already centered on the y-axis right now. It's already on 0. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It's already centered on the x-axis. So it's already at 0 on the x. You can see down here it's already on 0. We don't need to change the x-axis because we want it to be centered. I know somebody was having issues with getting that pivot point aligned on open space back here. You can't, pick a point back here because there's nothing to pick. So doing it this way, you've already taken care of the X. The X is already centered. So if you look this way, you can see that it's already centered on X. We just need to move it down and towards the back of the blocks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that to editable poly. And I already know that the z-axis is 0 because it's sitting on top of the ground. The only thing that's missing is the y-axis, so I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go back to Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only. And now I'm going to change the z to 0, which bumps that down to the ground plane. Then I'm going to paste in the location of that vertex that's on the back edge. Now you can see that the pivot point is now centered on that back edge even though there's nothing there. If I rotate around it, it's going to rotate around that. So then what you can do is just change that y-axis back to 0, and you can see that now the back edge is sitting at 0, 0, 0 in the world. Now, if you go to rotate stuff, it's rotating off that back pivot point in the center. And even if you do horizontally like this, it's rotating around that back point there. And let's see if I can go up here a little bit so you can see that a little bit better. You can see how it moves around the center point there of the world. I shouldn't need to do that, but so hopefully that helps out as far as that process goes. Then you can export this as a 3DS and import this as your phone block into your track scene. You can also set your heights and your widths and everything here. Typically you want to do that before you move the pivot point when it's still centered on the object at 0, 0. Basically you get your total measurement and then divide it in half, and then you can set it that way. You can set some of the measurements this way, obviously. Y-axis, you know, the total, that direction, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that helps you out, and thanks for watching.